The battle has begun. Shinki risked his life to protect his father. Oh yeah, today is my day. Boruto Chapter 15 leak has been released. Without much ado, let's get started. Spoilers begin with Ryu as the cover in Chapter 15. After in the previous chapter, Kankuro asked Konoha for help because Sunagakure was attacked by Shinju. In Chapter 15, we see the scene where Shinki was sealed by a tree and became Shinju. In a Sunagakure village, the story begins with Shinki and two other friends trapped by a large sand. But the reason why Shinki and the others were sealed by the sand was not without reason. Gaara was seen fighting against Matsuri and Sumeaka. And as a parent and Kazekage, he did not want them to interfere in this matter because of course it would be dangerous for them to fight Shinju and Sumeaka. And even though Gaara was injured to the point that his stomach suffered a fatal wound, he still defended and continued to try to defeat them without having to sacrifice Shinki and others to fight. But as a son, Shinki certainly could not stand by and see his father injured. And therefore, Shinki forced him to remove the sand seal on his body so that he and others could fight and help him fight the monster. And in fact, Matsuri had no intention of becoming their opponents, and based on her purpose, Matsuri was only following Boruto's tracks and searching for information about his ally. And if we analyze, doesn't the place where they fought look like Kashin Koji's base, right? And if you look at the chapter before Boruto was interrogated, there was a scene where Kashin Koji seemed to sense that someone was coming to that place. Because judging from the shape of the building and others, this is the same as what was happening when Gaara and others were fighting with Matsuri. So in conclusion, does this mean that Matsuri already knows the base where Kashin Koji is located? But certainly we haven't gotten confirmation of the beginning of this battle, and I'm sure there will definitely be another flashback when Jura told Matsuri to investigate Boruto's allies, because in the previous chapter, Mamushi told Jura that Matsuri had returned and had gotten information about Boruto's allies, and that means then there will most likely be a flashback where the beginning of Matsuri's journey investigates what Jura ordered. Oh yeah, after Gaara got a bad wound from fighting Matsuri, it turns out that the wound is not an ordinary wound. Because according to Matsuri, if it is not treated immediately, it will make him die. We don't know how the technical mechanism of Matsuri's ability, but if we look at the shape of her robe that looks like a tail, can she use it as a weapon to attack? And is there a poison effect or something from her abilities? This is insane! And even though Gaara is dying, he will not give up the Shinki seal and others just to help him fight them. Because as a young person who will continue the future, Gaara will not let them fight against that Shinju and die in a place like this. Gaara will do everything possible in order to protect them, even if his life is at stake. But in the end, Matsuri didn't care what Gaara said and even planned to kill them all. And then, Gaara used a jutsu that sealed Shinki and the others to be taken away from the place where Gaara would finish the fight. With a position that can be said to be cornered because he had to fight Matsuri and several Tsumeaka monsters, Gaara entrusted the future of Sunagakure to them. But before Gaara could finish the fight, Shinki managed to break the sand seal and free his hand. At the same time, Shinki used his jutsu and iron sand technique to break the sand sealing his body. And at the right time, Shinki managed to save Gaara and seal his body when the Tsumeaka wanted to eat him. But because Gaara previously said that the future of Sunagakure is them, Shinki, who is currently trying to protect Gaara, says that he is the father who will be the future of Sunagakure. Moreover, Shinki and others still need him as a protector of the village and also as a Kazekage. And seeing Shinki's decision to protect Gaara, Matsuri seems a little amazed at his way of thinking. Although this will ultimately turn out badly because Shinki did not follow his father's advice, Matsuri is now planning something else. And from that blind spot, Shinki, who was trying to protect Gaara and seal him in the iron sand, didn't realize that a Tsumeaka was trying to attack him. But because he didn't have time to dodge, the Tsumeaka bit him and sealed him until his body was now trapped in a tree. Areya and Yodo, who were panicking and didn't know what to do when Gaara and Shinki were in danger, were forced to leave them and give this information to Kankuro. And that was Shinki's request to Yodo and Areya, when now his body began to be sealed by the tree. While Gaara was saved, but could not break out of the iron sand seal, Shinki himself is now a tree for protecting his father. And in fact, even if Shinki is sealed by the tree and absorbs all his chakra, it will not make Gaara, who is sealed by his jutsu, just break free, and that means only Shinki can release it. With severe injuries from fighting Matsuri, Gaara was saved by Shinki's iron sand armor, but it's still not proven whether Gaara will die, because as Matsuri said before, if this wound is not healed immediately, then Gaara will most likely die. But if Gaara has to get out of the seal, it will be difficult because only Shinki can release the seal. Even Matsuri tried to detect and observe the shape of the protective seal that Shinki used to protect his father. Matsuri was truly amazed by Shinki's techniques and abilities, because after becoming a tree, the jutsu will remain effective as long as he becomes a tree. And because of the determination to protect his father, even if it means sacrificing his life and also having a very great ability, Matsuri plans to make Shinki her friend. And in the end, after Shinki became a tree, his chakra was absorbed and became a form that we know as Togedama. And therefore, in the previous chapter, Matsuri was so excited when she got Togedama from Shinki's chakra. Even Matsuri really couldn't wait to see what kind of form Shinki would take when he turned into Shinju, which we now know that his name is Ryu. Oh yeah. After Shinki turned into a tree and Gaara was sealed inside Shinki's jutsu, Kankuro immediately contacted Konoha after he got the information from Yoda and Araya. So the night after Gaara and Matsuri's fight, Sunagakure's team of investigators reinvestigated what happened to Shinki and Gaara. And from the results of that investigation, Kankuro said that Shinki was still alive, even though he had become a tree. And thanks to Shinki's sealing jutsu, Gaara survived Shinju, but his condition was now on the verge of death. But somehow, Gaara was still alive inside that protective seal. And from the results of what the Sunagakure team had done, Kankuro concluded that until now, the attempt to save them had been unsuccessful. In addition to Shinki becoming a tree, Gaara also could not be freed from the seal because only Shinki could release it. And from Kankuro's statement, based on what had happened to Gaara and Shinki, Shikamaru tried to convince and confirm to Kankuro whether there was anyone who seemed to have the same chakra as Shinki. But from that question, Kankuro stated that until now, no one had reported anything like what Shikamaru said. And if we talk about Gaara being alive, there's an interesting part of the seal technique made by Shinki. With his dying condition, Gaara should be dead, and that's the same as what Matsuri said, right? Then does Shinki's seal technique have another ability that can make the wound on Gaara's body heal? I'm sure this is not a coincidence for no reason. And most likely, what happened inside the seal has something to do with Shinki's technique ability. Oh yeah, since Kankuro had told Shikamaru that there was no one who had the same chakra as Shinki in that place, Shikamaru said that this case Konoha was also conducting an in-depth investigation. And in conclusion, if Konoha had obtained information and knew clearly about it, then Konoha would contact Sunagakure again. And Sarada, who at that time had previously come to ask Shikamaru about the results of Boruto's interrogation, Sarada was so panicked and anxious to find out that Shinki had become a tree. And because not many people know about the number of Shinju, Sarada assumes that there will likely be many more monsters like that. But for sure, Shikamaru couldn't be sure about that yet, because basically he still wanted to check to make sure of the real possibility. And in essence, Shikamaru asked Sarada and Sumire to tell him if he met Boruto, and because the most important thing now was the information he needed. Oh yeah, guys, since part of the page hasn't been translated yet, I'll upload the next part as soon as possible, but you don't have to worry. I'll add part 2 on the top right corner, and you'll be able to see it after part 2 is finished. See you in the next episode. Bye-bye.